You know, I hate to interrupt you, Mike. Seems like you were engrossed in that book, whatever that was. Oh yeah, I've heard of that. That guy, Tim Durling.
Dim Turling or
Anyway,
something like that. Yeah.
yeah. Um, before we get started, nice hat. Tell us about the hat.
T Public now sell hats. So we have grab a stack of rock hats and they look great with your Tim's Vinyl Confession shirts. You can get a Tim Vinyl Confession hat now.
You
That's
can.
new.
Now, I'm not much of a hat guy unless I'm mowing the lawn, but um, that's I've got a new shirt celebrating 10 years of Tim's Vinyl Confessions. That's our both of our cheap plugs for T Public. Welcome everyone to Tim's Vinyl Confessions. I'm Tim Durling. My good friend Mike Ladano from Grab a Stack of Rock is sitting in with me. I don't think Mike's been on in a while, and that's not right. Can't have can't have that.
Actually, we just did Helix like 3 weeks ago, but that's okay.
Yeah, that wasn't a full on episode, right?
True. It has been a while since I've done a full on album
Yeah.
review episode.
And the band that we're doing, if you haven't ascertained by my backdrop here, we actually did an episode on our CD collections, I do believe,
Mhm.
Mr. Big, and this was a band that was supposed to be done.
Yeah.
The Big Finish, and they've got a new album. And believe it or not, like I had to do the math in my head. I'm like, do they really have 10 albums or 10 studio albums? Yes, they do. So, yes, just it's been out for a few weeks now on Frontiers Records, Mr. Big's latest album. It's called 10. And there's like an ancient map design on these hands. What do you
Yeah.
think what is that supposed to represent, Mike? Your best guess.
I thought about it, and well, we obviously know what the hands represent, the number 10. And I thought maybe the map referred to their career as a world trotting rock band. They have seen it all, they've done it all, they've been all over that map. That's my only guess that I have, Tim.
That's a good guess. I mean, yeah, Japan took them to their hearts right away. They can, to this day, they can go over there and sell out huge venues, much more so, unfortunately, than in North America. But, and yeah, last year they did what they called the Big Finish, and they got drummer. How do you say his name?
Nick DeViglio, is that correct?
I
I
don't know.
probably I've got to read it, but
Siri, how do you say Mr. Big's drummer's name? Pat Torpy. No.
oh, ouch.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with them finishing off in respect with Pat.
No,
The tr
no, 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 and that doesn't bother me, not at all. I'm just saying that most people will always think of Pat Torpy, the late Pat Torpy as being Mr. Big's drummer. But yeah, Nick's been. What was he in? Was he in Spock's Beard? I'm so bad
Spock's
with
beard,
this stuff.
yes.
I just can't keep. I can't keep up. I'm old. I'm decrepit. I'm
They had
wasting away, Mike.
They had Matt Starr from Ace Frehley's band helping out during Defying Gravity, but I think the ultimate decision was made that Matt didn't have the right voice, and Mr. Big is dependent on the four voices blending. And I guess
You
Nick just
know,
had the right vocals.
great. Yeah, great blend. And so on this album, you know, Mr. Big's a funny band for me. I've been into them from the get go. I was
Yeah.
aware of them before they existed. I think I talked about that on the last episode that we did.
Hit Parader
And
magazine was talking about them, and that's how I got on board before the
yeah,
album came out.
I think people were curious about what Billy Sheehan was going to do after
Yes.
leaving David Lee Roth. The band was really formed about him, which is kind of odd when we get into respect to this new album. But
Yeah.
yeah, I remember buying that first album. I heard 4 songs off of it, really liked them all, and I bought that first album, and I was a little underwhelmed. Underwhelmed. I didn't think it was bad, but and this is something that's a lot of times has been my impression of the Mr. Big albums. They're always very well done, very well produced, but sometimes I have a hard time remembering the songs.
Yeah. Sometimes for me, it's almost like every other album. They do one
Kind
that's
of,
like
yeah,
this and then one like that,
yeah,
you know?
yeah, because obviously the second album, Lean Into It, was their big album. Now
Yeah.
I was way into that album. I thought this is way better.
The
The songs,
songwriting had gone up
the songs are
several
memorable.
notches.
The songs are catchy, and I was really glad that they did score that hit in the last last inning with To Be With You. Didn't matter if it was representative or not. Hey, they had a platinum album and they had a number one song. They had another top 30 song, Just Take My Heart. And I think that they knew at the time. As a matter of fact, the late manager, Herbie Herbert, told them, guys, this is going to be it. And okay, because some bands never have an it.
That's right.
So why not? They can't take that. It's like Extreme. You can't take that away from them.
Yeah.
For a moment, everybody knew who Mr. Big was.
Yeah.
And but then Bump Ahead came out, which was okay. But I really like Hey Man from '96.
Yeah, I was going to say, Hey Man was
that came out to absolutely no fanfare. Nobody was listening to bands like Mr. Big. I happened to get it through Columbia House. I'm like, this is really good.
Me too. Columbia House. And Take Cover was the song that blew me away as
Take
soon as I
Cover
heard
was
that
awesome.
album.
That was a big hit in Japan. You get someone from Japan, they hear that opening drum intro, and it's like us hearing like My Sharona or something. You know exactly what it is. Oh, it's Mr. Big. So, yeah, and then they did the two albums with Richie Kotzen, which ultimately I have a hard time remembering songs from. Again,
some good tunes though. They're
killer lineup, and when I'm playing it, it sounds good. And then there was nothing for 10 years, and then they came back with Defying. With What If? What If?
I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. Which I thought was pretty good. And then the next two albums to me were Diminishing Returns. The Stories We Could Tell and Defying Gravity. Diminishing Returns.
Title track on Defying Gravity was pretty awesome, though.
It was, yeah. Ask Sean Kelly about that song. It became a very special song for him.
Okay, I will ask.
Get Sean's book. Don't call it hair metal, folks. It's awesome. But now I'm going to say, spoiler alert, this is really good. Really strong for a latter day album from such a veteran band. I think this is a really good album, Mike, and we should talk about it track by track. We heard a few songs from it in advance, and the first song, "Good Luck Trying," kind of got a bluesy. It's not a shuffle. I don't know what you'd call it. It's like
well, in my spoiler alert, I've got a written review that I'm going to be posting when this video drops. But in my notes for that review, I wrote that I'm getting a definite manic depression vibe from it.
Yes, that's the song. What does this remind me of?
It's manic depression
rhythm. I'm like, what does that remind? That's exactly it. Manic Depression by Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah, and in my opinion, this album, although I agree with you that this is a fantastic album and it's probably my favorite since Hey Man, I get a vibe right from the get-go. This is a different Mr. Big album. Like it's not a hard rock album per se. There's left turns and right turns, and that opening track is kind of a left turn. It's got that like Hendrixy vibe. It's very throwback. I get a lot of throwback on this album, and it's right there from the get-go on this first track. And it's a rocker, and I think it showcases the playing of the band members very, very well. And spoiler alert, I think this is a Paul Gilbert showcase album to me.
Yeah. I mean, we'll get into the way that the writing credits are divvied up, but then the next one, I Am You, again, very different.
That's my take cover on this album. I Am You is the song that's stuck in my head. It's it would be the hit if there was such a thing these days. I like that they're blending these acoustics and electrics, but they're not doing it in a ballady way. Like, this is different for Mr. Big. I have not heard songs like I Am You out of them before, really. I'm digging it big time. That's my tune. That's my jam. I Am You.
Yeah, it's a good cat. It's really good, really well written course. And I think that we need to talk about a couple of things. So a lot of the songs here, Eric Martin's co-writing with Andre Pessis. I'm not sure how Pessis.
I always pronounce it Pessis, but I don't know.
But he's been co-writing with him since Lean Into It. He's a you see his name on a lot of different albums from all kinds of different genres.
Yeah.
But the significant thing on this album is this is a first, and this is, I think, part of the reason why this album sounds so different. There are no songwriting contributions from Billy Sheehan.
Mm-hmm.
And the band was formed, or he basically formed the band around himself. This is his band.
Yes.
And yet he said I don't know if he was because he was on tour with Winery Dogs or what, but there are no Billy Sheehan songwriting contributions, but I do not think this album suffers for it in the least. As a matter of fact, I think it's part of the reason why there is this extra element of maybe more acoustics. I don't know. It's not, maybe it's quite not so four-piece bands just stripped down, guitar, bass, drums. I don't know. But it's pretty significant because, you know, when it's the band is formed around one member and they're usually right in there with the songwriting, then all of a sudden they're not on what's supposed to be their last album. It's kind of an odd thing, but I like it.
If you go back to the first album, bass is so prominent in the song construction of that album. Think like about a song like Had Enough. On this album, the bass is not a prominent part of the songs at all. That's a big difference. There's only really a couple bass solos on the album, which we'll get to. It's just you can hear the difference, and I think that acoustic guitar is filling the gap where maybe Billy's bass melodies would have been more upfront. And no knocking Billy Sheehan. He's always been one of my favorite bass players. I mean, you can't listen to that guy and not be blown away. It's interesting. We're starting to hear on this album maybe what Billy Sheehan does bring to the table in terms of
Yeah,
songwriting. And it is a strange decision to go ahead with a quote unquote final album without Billy's input and just say, okay, well, hey, Billy, are you okay with that? Yeah, I guess so. I understand he was too busy at the time to write. I was reading an interview yesterday, and I think that's what he said. But it is strange because this is, they say, the final Mr. Big album. At least they're going out on a good one. And I'm assuming Billy was happy with the material. Otherwise,
look, if he wasn't on board with all of it, we wouldn't be talking about it because it wouldn't have come out.
that's
It
right.
wouldn't have
That's
happened. The
right.
recording, the writing, recording, whatever time they set aside for it, wouldn't have happened.
That's right.
And another thing, and again, yeah, Billy Sheehan, one of the greatest bass players of all time, utterly unique. But sometimes, even if he's not soloing, sometimes the bass playing, it's so loud in the mix, it's almost too much.
Yeah.
And sometimes it overshadows, like, this could be a conventional song if it wasn't for that bass being just so cranked and in your face, and he's got such a unique tone.
Yeah.
I really hear him playing for the song here, almost as if it was somebody else's album and he was just called in as a session guy. It's not, it's not like David Lee Roth's Skyscraper. You can barely hear him. You can tell he's there. It's playing for the song, and it's a good bunch of songs to do that with. So if it's an experiment, I think it's a successful one. So next up, we got right out of here. This one, I hear a little Eastern modality to the guitar melody.
Okay, so in my notes, I put Zeppelin vibes.
Yeah.
And I hear a lot of that on this album in general. Um, I, now I'm not as familiar with this album as I probably could be. I've only had it about a week, but I think this is the song where he's singing about that voodoo. It's a kind of a recurring motif in Mr. Big lyrics.
Oh yeah,
Voodoo, he
Voodoo
likes that.
Kiss, and yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But I like this. I do get a Zeppy vibe, and I'm cool with that. You don't hear a lot of Zeppy vibes coming out of Mr. Big. So, there's
Not
different things
really.
shining.
No. Yeah, not really. Now next we have Sunday Morning Kind of Girl. What about
Oh,
this one?
didn't like it the first time I played it. Now it's stuck in my head. There's
It's
some
very
really
catchy. It's
cool,
extremely catchy.
yes, very Beatlesy melodies that I'm getting out of this.
And
Um,
that's, to me, that's Paul Gilbert.
I agree. I agree. He is the green tinted 60s mind kind of guy.
Yeah. He's
Um,
he's he's the 60s, 70s pop radio, AM radio guy.
yeah.
There's a great interview with him that I would recommend anyone check out on the channel is escaping me, of course. The guy calls himself the captain. It's talking about gear. He's from the UK, and
I
I'm
know
a
the
moron,
channel.
so I can't think of it. But it's a great interview, and Paul really lets you in on what informs his songwriting choices and the chords he uses. And he even talks about how there's a chord in God Only Knows by the Beach Boys that ends up in Green Tinted 60s Mind. This really weird, like seventh chord that I can't even make with my
Right.
hands. But that pop sensibility, that's why Mr. Big was never, there's never an all out metal song because Paul's, even though he's a shredder, even though he can do it, he's not that kind of, that's not the way he thinks. He thinks like a songwriter. And
Yeah.
man, I think he shines all over this album.
Yeah, big time. As I alluded to earlier, I think this is kind of a Paul Gilbert showcase album. He's just
Yeah.
all, and it's not shreddy. Like it's not
No,
addicted to this rush. There's nothing like that on this
no,
album.
there's nothing
Nothing.
showboaty. It's just a good, solid collection of rock songs.
And there's no campfire to be with you songs either. There's
Nope.
no real obvious. There are ballads, but not real obvious like radio ballads.
Right. Yeah. So next up is Who We Are.
Okay, according to my notes, Who We Are is an electric ballad with a bluesy style, not as memorable as some past big ballads, but a good song regardless. Great chorus. I
Yeah.
really liked the chorus on this one.
Yeah. Um, it's interesting because there's a song. I used to be able to retrieve things right away, but there's a song on the third Winery Dogs album. And by the way, I'm a huge Winery Dogs fan. There's a song on Winery Dogs 3 where the phrase "Who We Are" comes. Hold on a second.
Just it's right there.
I think it's called Breakthrough. Yeah, it's Breakthrough because of who we are. Which again, there's no connection there songwriting
Right.
wise, just in
Yeah.
personnel. Anyway, oh, next up, As Good as It Gets.
Okay. I wrote down that this is up-tempo acoustic electric fun.
This
Like
is
I Am You.
I wrote this had like jangly,
Jangly's a good word,
and
yeah.
it's good. Oh man, it's good. I don't know that I've heard anything out of this like this out of Mr. Big before.
This is one of the few that has some Billy bass shredding on it. But I
Yeah.
was really attracted to the drum parts and the drum fills here. I thought they were really exceptional, and clearly they did make a good choice in the drumming department. I really very much, and I love Pat Torpey. He
Oh,
was one of
Pat
my
Torpey, and
favorite
Pat had
parts.
such a unique style too. The way
Yeah,
his hi hats and just the way he wouldn't do your typical rock drum fills or drum beats. He would do
yeah,
it for a bit, but then he'd change it up in a way that you're like, whoa, what did he just do there?
yeah. And I'm getting kind of similar vibes here from Nick. Just really nice drum parts, really tasteful and
Yeah,
interesting to listen to.
these
Great
guys are
song.
all playing for the song on this album. They always talked
Yes.
about playing for the song, but the problem is, I think in the earlier days, all of them were just so damn talented that they just could not help themselves but to be exuberant about it and you
I
know
believe there's more to it than that. I'm hearing so much maturity on this album in terms of songwriting. Like
yeah
we're hearing influences that these guys they simply didn't have all of these same influences 35 years ago when that debut album dropped. Paul Gilbert, he came out of what was he in Racer
Racer X.
X?
Yeah, he
Right.
was
So
like
like that's
21,
shred
22.
metal.
He was young. He was a young shredder. You know,
Yeah, and he
he
comes
was
out of
from that
this
Shrapnel Records stable.
exactly. And it was kind of like the people who knew what was going on, like you and I, knew that this monster bass player was teaming up with this new young guitar shredder and also this veteran drummer that had done road work with Robert Plant and
Yeah,
this young singer with this unique voice. And it has taken them 10 albums to naturally get to this point where we have this music, which
yeah,
is, you wouldn't, this album could not have come out after the debut. It couldn't have come out in 1991 when Lean Into It did. It couldn't have come out in 93 when Bump Ahead did.
yeah,
This is the product of growth. Like Paul Gilbert, he went solo, as you said, did a lot of different kinds of music as a solo artist. And of course, Eric Martin, songwriter
Eric
supreme.
was an established solo. Eric was almost 30 when the first album came out.
Yeah,
He'd done an album as the Eric Martin Band. He'd done two albums under his own name, and you know, he was touted as being this next. Everybody knew this guy's so talented. He's got to break through sooner or later. But unfortunately, it just didn't do it on his own. Didn't you recently find a single of his?
I did. And when I was in Toronto with Aaron, I found one of his singles from his debut album, which ironically, just because of everything that's gone on in my life, I haven't had a chance to play it yet, but I did stream it on YouTube. Very pop.
Very poppy, yeah, very
And
poppy. Like if you're thinking about checking out Eric Martin's early stuff because he's done solo albums since, do not expect Mr. Big in the least.
no,
Very pop. They were very much trying to mold him into, I don't know, like a Don Henley or a
John Waite.
John Waite. Good, really good comparison. I mean that '85 album, the self-titled one you're talking about. I mean, he's got Steve Lukather on it. He's got Danny Korchmar. I mean,
Yeah.
he even said I'm almost like a guest on my own album. That the session guys are bigger than me.
Yep.
Also, if you're here in Canada watching this and you're a Triumph fan, check out the original version of Just One Night. Now,
Mm-hmm.
it is poppy as all get out, but man, does he sing it well.
Yeah,
That's
and
his
that's a
song. I mean, he co-wrote that with Neil Schon and Tony Finucci. That's his song. Triumph covered Eric Martin.
that's right. That is
Fine.
right. And it was a reasonable hit in
It
Canada.
was a reasonable size hit for Triumph. Anyway, um, so next up, this is one
Right.
of my favorites. It's fun. It's playful. What were you thinking?
Love this song.
Yeah,
Wicked slide guitar work by Paul Gilbert. It's an up-tempo rocker. I think it's probably the fastest tune on the
I
album.
think so. Yeah, I would say so.
But it's not like Addicted to This to that Rush. It's not like shreddy up.
No,
It's not
it's
that
more
kind of
like
up-tempo.
I can't think of a song to compare it to, but I say it's playful. It's like
Yeah,
I don't know if it's like
playful.
how can you do what you do, or it's one of those faster, but it's not super fast. It's not like Daddy, Brother, Mother, Little Boy, or like you said, or Colorado Bulldog. It's not one of those type songs,
No.
but it's fast. It's up tempo. I imagine it would be fun to do live. I hope they do songs from this live.
Right, like I think they haven't done any live, if I'm not mistaken, right? We looked at some set lists, and I don't
Yeah,
think they are playing any of these songs live, which is a shame.
yeah. I had a chance to go see them. Well, not really a chance, but they earlier this year they actually played in Portland, Maine, which is drivable for me. But it was like the end of January. Never sure what the weather's going to be like. And plus,
Mhm.
we had already had Matt and I had already had tickets to go see Jeff Tate, which was a
Right.
fantastic show. Same venue, by the way.
Oh, that's a
And
great
that would have
venue.
been, it would have been great. But sometimes you have to pick. You have to choose, right?
Yeah. Well,
So
you chose well, I will say. Check out that TVC episode.
yeah. Oh, he Jeff sounded so good. We were not sure. Anyway, which is a good segue because a lot has been made about Eric Martin's voice,
Yeah.
and I got to tell you, man, I get really frustrated when people they'll read one person's review and then they'll go with it as if that's fact. So it is documented, and Eric has been very upfront about the fact that he's been struggling live and has
Live.
had what is this? Is it Michelle?
Michelle Lupi from
Yeah,
Whitesnake.
helping him out with vocals on stage. He's been very transparent about that. So people are saying, oh, I don't like the way he sounds in this album. You're not listening to this album. You're not
No,
listening
he
to the album.
sounds
Forget
good
about
on this album.
what the live stuff. That's what you're basing all of this on. Eric sounds great on this album. Maybe it's a little different tone. Maybe it's a little lower
Yes.
in tone, but I actually kind of like that. I really like the
Yeah.
way he's sounding on this album.
Listen, folks, every singer in the world, as they age, get a little lower in tone, get a little raspier. I hear it in my own voice.
Yeah.
It's natural. And this album does not have anything to do with what is going on live. That happened after the fact. He is running into vocal issues. Touring is different. And he sounds good on this. He sounds like Eric Martin. You can tell it's Eric Martin. There's no question it. Um, but he is a little bit lower. Like on Addicted to That Rush, he's gets up there. He gets really up
Yeah.
there.
And you're going to do that. You're not even going to think about it when you're younger.
Yeah, when you're
You,
29 years old, you can do it with ease.
you're not going to think about what is this going to be like when I'm 69.
Right.
And no less an authority than Neil Peart has was he was talking about, believe it or not, this is way off the beaten path. He was talking about Linkin Park, and he
Oh,
was talking about them in his album or his book Traveling Music, which I think he put out. I think he put that out in 2004. I could be off by a year or two, but
after
he was
Vapor
talking about music
Trails.
that he enjoyed, and he talked about how, boy, those kids are not going to be able to scream like that in,
Right.
in 40 years, but they shouldn't work. They're not thinking about that, nor should they. Go for it. Go for it. Get it. Get the recordings down. And yeah, they're not paying attention. They're not paying attention because Eric sounds great. He's unmistakable. He's still got that beautiful bluesy Paul Rogers meets Steve Marriott meets, I don't even know. Like he's got that utterly unique tone. It's still here, folks. And maybe the fact that it's a little deeper makes it a little easier on the ears, because when he would constantly sing up in that highest range, you kind of get that, I don't know. Not saying that
Yeah,
it's
I
all good.
agree.
I'm just saying that yes, your vocal cords. If you could watch a time lapse video of what happens to your vocal cords when it gets older, they get tighter, and you have to push more air to get the higher note out. I mean, everybody talks about that, and it happens to the best of them. And God bless Eric for not saying, "I'm just going to lip sync.
Right.
I'm just going to
And
leave that right there." So
we
he's
won't
been open
talk
about
about
that, but
that.
that has nothing to do with the way he can sing in the studio. And now Eric's even singing, I don't know if I want this to be our last album.
Yes, and I'm with them
And
on that
here
sentiment.
is what I think about that. I've talked to Martin Popoff about this many, many times. We don't want less music. We want more. I don't care if you're playing live. Get in the studio, bang out the music, write songs, get those albums out while you can. Give us more, not less. You've got
I agree.
creativity inside of you. Get the music out. Who cares? I see mere handfuls of concerts now,
Yeah,
but I want to hear new music. I want to hear
me
new
too.
music out of these guys. So I think it's great. Let's get back into the album. Next up is Courageous.
Courageous is probably it's probably the one that moved me the least. It's the one I can't really remember how it goes after I play the album. Mid tempo, not I wouldn't call it a ballad. Wonderful guitar work on it, but not one that I can really remember after I'm taking the album
Same.
and put it back in the case.
On the other hand, I think they saved one of the best songs in the album and a song they previewed for the last proper song on the album. That is Up on You. I think this is another fun, upbeat, good time, almost pop rocker. And I don't say that as a that's not a negative. I really like this one.
It's
It's
the one
Eric.
where I'm getting the most of an 80s vibe.
Yeah,
Um,
this sounds like it could have come off on I think any of the first three Mr. Big albums.
yes, although Paul Gilbert wasn't throwing down the slide guitar like he is today on this track.
No,
And you know what? I wrote in my notes, speaking of lip syncing, I kind of compared the slide guitar work on this to Motley Crue, Mick Mars. The way that he throws on that slide into a rock song in an unexpected way. You got to give Mick
yeah,
Mars a lot of credit for bringing the slide into mainstream hard rock. And I'm
like
not
think
saying
about
Paul
Primal
Gilbert,
Scream. That wouldn't have
right?
that song, which
It's
is my
all
favorite
slide.
Motley Crue song.
Me too.
A shredding solo wouldn't have fit that song at all.
Not at all. And I'm not saying Mick Mars influenced Paul Gilbert on this. I'm
No,
just saying
but
there's a
I hear what you
commonality.
mean.
There's a
Yeah, yeah,
commonality. I liked it a lot. Good song.
yeah. And then finally, we end on I kind of downbeat. It's a really nice melody. It's a very melancholy song called "The Frame."
Like it. It has an intensity to it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I, I think it'll all depend on how this album grows with me as I listen to it, but it might be one ballad too many at this point. I'm not sure. Mr. Big have had multiple ballads on older albums before. No big deal. Just I'm not sure if it's what I wanted at that stage of the album. Again, need to grow
It's
with
an
it.
interesting way to end it. I think it's my favorite of the slower type songs on this album. Sounds very personal. Like whoever,
Oh,
it sounds very personal to me, and there's a definite sort of resignation here in the song. Now here's where it gets interesting.
yeah.
The big mystery of the album, not the big finish. Oh, by the way, yes, um, I had it written down. Oh, I'm so good at remembering everything. Yes, it is in Sunday Morning Kind of Girl where they actually write in the big finish,
I
which is
had that
what
in
they
my
called
notes and
their
forgot to mention it.
quote
Yeah.
unquote final tour.
And
But the
also,
last song on the album, Eight
sorry,
Days on the
can
Road.
I just say one other thing, Tim? Uh,
No.
okay, fine. There was one other thing I wanted to say lyrically, and that's I give Eric Martin credit for saying "phasers on stun" in one of the
Yes, that
earlier
is,
tunes.
yes. Yeah,
Love that
that was
lyric.
awesome.
The big finish and "phasers on stun" are the two phrases that jumped out at me while listening. Sorry, final track.
Um, it's fine. It's fine.
I like to derail things.
Yeah. Oh well. Um, 8 Days on the Road. Now this is a cover. I don't know who did it originally. It was co-written by Jerry Ragavoy. That you'll see his name in a bunch of old '60s songs. But the big mystery that Mike and I talked about this, and by now someone's confirmed. Who the heck is singing this song?
I think it's Paul.
It doesn't because I know that you've said that, and I'm not disagreeing with you. But we've all heard these guys talk in interviews, that voice on this song doesn't sound like any of them to me.
Yeah.
I don't hear that voice because Paul Gilbert's very smooth, like he's got a just an every guy kind of voice. I like this. Whoever it sounds like they're putting a Billy Gibbons vibe on this with the rasp. I
Oh, he's
love it.
so
I
good.
think it's really cool. I'm just trying to figure out who it is. Maybe it is Paul, but if it is, boy, he's quite the chameleon because I've heard him sing. Like hear him sing harmonies. He doesn't sound like that.
Well, I'm sure it's not Billy. It could be
It's
Nick.
definitely not Billy. It's not Eric.
It could be Nick. Um, I don't know. Somebody will have to let us know in the comments, and they'll probably tell us that we're both dumbasses. But this is such a good bonus track. It's like you get
Yeah.
to the album, and oftentimes the bonus track is kind of like, well, that was anticlimax. No,
Well, this
not
is
this
what I
one.
like to say about bonus tracks, and Classic Rock Magazine inspired this. What's bonus about something you've paid for?
Well, here's the thing: is that it's a bonus track, but I guess the US version of the album doesn't have it, and they have an instrumental track. Johnny Clouser was on my show yesterday. He just
Yes.
got the new Mr. Big, and it has a completely different final track, an instrumental. So I'm going to order a US version of the album so I can get both. I don't know what territories have 8 days on the road, but Canada definitely, because we both have
Well,
it.
so the vinyl has it too. The vinyl is the same track listing as the CD. But here's the interesting thing, and maybe it's because we're in Canada. That's the default version that you'll find on Amazon.
Okay.
I didn't look for bonus versions or deluxe versions, but that's the so it's probably cheaper because we all know about shipping costs. It's probably cheaper now for Amazon Canada to import stuff from, I'm assuming from the EU, because Frontiers is an Italian company, than it would be to get something from the US.
That could be. Um, it's not cheap to ship in CDs from the US, but whatever the case
Mike,
may be, I think that we are fortunate that we got.
Japanese imports are very expensive.
And check out the July 26th episode of Grab a Stack of Rock for that joke. Yeah, sorry, I've lost
Japanese
my train of thought.
imports are very expensive.
One I need right there.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to derail that. I had never heard that story before, and I was sitting at my desk watching that episode. And please, guys, go watch it. It's on Johnny's feed too because he shared it. I laughed. So I'm sitting there at my desk laughing my head off out loud because I could picture the whole thing. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, it is a pretty funny story. That goes back to 2012, going to Toronto looking for Japanese imports. But fortunate, I think we are fortunate to have 8 days on the road. I think this is a stellar bonus track. To me, it sounds like, I don't know if you're a King's X fan, but there's one album where they ended it on a live tune. And it just kind of reminds me of that. Sometimes it works. Motley Crue, Girls, 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 ended it with that live
Well, or
version.
or the first Mr. Big album ending on the live version of 30 Days in the Hole,
Oh, you're right.
unless you
Yes,
just had the
yes.
vinyl.
So there you go. Look at that brain fart. Didn't even think of it. So there's some bookends here. There's a bookend feeling with this track, and I like it. But I am gonna try to get that instrumental one that Johnny Clouser has because
Yeah.
you know me, I want all the tracks.
I'm kind of glad we got the vocal tune.
Yeah, yeah, I am too. I think this is, to me, this is the proper close of the album. But let's hear what that instrumental sounds like.
All right, so folks, check out the new Mr. Big and whatever version of it you can get. Make sure like and subscribe, grab a stack of rock, follow what Mike's doing, MikeLadano.com, merch on TeePublic. I'm on TeePublic. Like and subscribe as well. I do want to clear something up in case there's any confusion. Subscribing does not cost you a thing. You literally click subscribe and then you get notified when we post new videos. It helps us. It helps drive the views up. It just helps us. It doesn't cost you a thing. Don't forget, all of my books are available on Amazon. The good Michael Ladano contributed to that book and the one before it, my Y&T book. So there you go. So thanks, Mike, for guesting here. We've actually got another episode coming up very, very soon that we're doing together. Watch for Mike popping up everywhere. He's like Waldo. You just never know where you're going to find him. And go listen to some Mr. Big. Go listen to this new album. And Mike, thanks for taking a little bit of time out from your cottage. It looks very cool. See
Thank
y'all
you,
later.
Tim, and you
Thanks.
have a wonderful day.
Thanks for watching Tim's Vinyl Confessions. We'll see you.